Hey, Witch Mob! Welcome to the Who Is This Crazy Hag podcast.
Really?
I've never heard it.
Come on, just tell it.
Okay. So this lady in Mexico City gets in a taxi with her son, and the taxi driver says, "Where do you want to go?" And she tells him, "La Zona Rosa." And he says, "La Zona Rosa? Why would you want to go there? Are you a prostitute?" "That's the red light district." And she gets cranky with him. She's like, "No, I'm not a prostitute. We're going to do business. What is it to you anyway?" And the boy, he's 11 or 12 years old, sitting next to his mum and just staring at the taxi driver. And the taxi driver turns around and says, "Are you sure you're not a prostitute? Only prostitutes go to that street." And she says, "Sir, I'm not a prostitute. Can you please just drive?" She's getting really cranky with him. And so then the son looks at his mum and he says, "Mum, what's a prostitute?" And the lady glares at the taxi driver and she says, "Well, it's a woman who works at night." And so the boy says, "Well, you don't work at night." And she says, "No, I don't." And so they sit there for a minute in silence, and the taxi's going through the streets, and the driver's click-clacking because he's still thinking, well, she's going to the red light district, so she must be a prostitute, or at the very least a stripper. And so then the boy looks over to his mother and he says, "Mum, do prostitutes have children?" And she looks at him and she says, "Well, yes, they do, darling. That's where taxi drivers come from." Enjoy the story. Don't forget to share with your friends and follow on Spotify.
Secret Garden is a 5-star vegan and vegetarian restaurant where you can have an incredible chef-to-table experience for breakfast, lunch or dinner. Our chef is an expert in food allergies and intolerances and can cater to any dietary need from gluten, sugar or dairy-free to creating a low FODMAPs menu or catering to any other dietary requirements you have. Stop by Secret Garden for an amazing meal or order online and pick up any time. Grab a dessert or an ice cream while you're there. Groups are welcome with a reservation, and you can discuss a custom-made menu for your event with the chef. Secret Garden has an extensive menu with excellent prices, and you won't be disappointed. Mention the Who Is This Crazy Hag podcast for a complimentary drink.
This story takes place in Mexico in the year 2008. It's called Taking a Taxi to Hell. My friend Monica and I were running late for a date on a gorgeous evening in October. In a giggling rush, we raced into the street to find an empty taxi. Mexico City is massive, the largest urban sprawl in the Western Hemisphere. Set in the basin of Mexico and surrounded by hills, the peaks of Popocatépetl and Iztaccíhuatl can be seen nearby. It usually took hours to get from one place to another, especially in heavy peak hour traffic. The streets crawled with cars, a large percentage of which were conspicuous yellow taxis, cruising the streets, looking for a fare, like hungry vultures seeking out fresh meat. The majority of Mexico City taxi drivers have earned themselves the dubious reputation of being slightly less honest than the city's numerous pickpockets. Anyone who climbs into a taxi in Mexico City, whether they are local or not, needs to keep their eyes and ears open. Fortunately, Monica was one of those people who is always on the ball. Normally, Monica worked as the night manager at a popular inner-city cafe. But that night, she was free We were going out somewhere special with friends, and rushed out of her apartment building to find a taxi, stopping briefly to buy chewing gum on the way. After several minutes trying to wave down an endless string of occupied taxis, we leapt into a vacant taxi and told the driver our destination. Hosteria de Santo Domingo, said Monica in fluent Spanish. The city raced by the windows as we headed towards Mexico City's oldest restaurant. Placing her handbag on the seat beside her, Monica relaxed to take in the view of the park we were driving past for a moment. Then, back in busy mode, she reached for her cell phone to call her boyfriend and say we were on our way. Feeling around on the seat, she couldn't find the bag and looked down at the empty space where it had been sitting a minute before. Stunned, she shook her head and looked again. "My bag is gone," she announced, astonished. We looked on the floor and under the seats and along the ledge under the back window, thinking she may have mistakenly put it there. Her large blue handbag was nowhere to be found. She definitely had it when we got in the car, but Monica suddenly had a flash of doubt that she had brought her precious handbag with her. However, she was still chewing the gum she'd bought at the corner store on her way to the main street. Certain she had climbed into the taxi with her handbag, she informed the driver it was missing. "Why is that my problem?" he growled at her. "I just got in your taxi and I had it with me," said Monica. "You probably forgot it somewhere. Do you want to get out?" "But it was just here. Didn't you see it?" she asked. "How the hell should I know where your bag is? Can you stop, please?" Monica felt he was behaving more brutally and cold-blooded than was necessary. "Something isn't right," she whispered in English. It was a gut feeling. She couldn't pinpoint the exact reason. Following her instincts, she told the gruff driver she didn't want to get out, and agreed she'd probably forgotten the bag somewhere. She winked at me, letting me know all would be well, then asked the driver to take a different route, knowing the road passed by a busy police station. "How are you going to pay?" he demanded. "My boyfriend will pay when we get there," she reassured him. As the taxi stopped at a red light, she wound down the window and hailed a uniformed officer crossing the street. He was walking towards the police station, which was just past the intersection. Explaining what had happened, the policeman ordered the driver to pull over to the side of the road. Amazingly, he was familiar with this apparently common problem and asked the taxi driver to step out of the car. The growling man rolled out of his seat and slouched around the car to the pavement, his stained, greasy shirt hanging loosely from the top of his tattered trousers. The policeman called 2 officers standing nearby to come and assist, and began noting down the license and registration details of the taxi driver. Monica also got out of the car and began chatting to one of the officers. She explained the story of the vanishing handbag and told the police what had happened so far. She was distraught at the loss of her bag. It had been a birthday gift from her boyfriend. She was also upset at being this late for our date and unable to call anyone to say she was on her way. At this point, pretty sure we wouldn't continue our journey in this taxi, I got out too. A small crowd was gathering on the pavement between the taxi and the police station. More uniformed police came outside to keep the spectators at bay. The first policeman ordered the taxi driver to open the trunk. Curled up in the rear cavity was a man in a grimy black suit. He lay in a fetal position, clutching the missing bag to his chest. Monica was shocked. The spectators were aghast. A thick cloud of gossip formed over the group. The police were not surprised. 2 policemen dragged the frightened man out of the boot of the car and roughly shoved him on the ground. One of them snatched the bag out of his hands and passed it to Monica. "Check the contents and make sure nothing is missing," he said. After a quick inspection, she confirmed all her possessions were still there. The man was handcuffed and dragged away. A further investigation of the taxi revealed 2 large square holes cut into the right and left sides of the seat, neatly over the join where the cushions of the back seat met. The holes went all the way into the trunk, allowing the hidden accomplice easy access to the back seat. The police informed us the scam was popular in the city. The thief would reach through the cushions and grab whatever bags they could, while the driver kept them preoccupied with meaningless conversation. If the bags were bigger than the hole, they could rummage through them for wallets and phones while the customer wasn't looking. If the customer realized the bag was missing, the driver would suggest they left it somewhere else or forgotten it, and sometimes even generously let their victim out without paying the fare. Only passengers who kept their bags on their laps were saved the angst of robbery. "I've never seen anything like this in my life," Monica said, shaking her head. A native of Moctezuma in central Mexico, she had moved to Mexico City to study and was astounded anyone could be so blatantly dishonest. "How dare you rob your fellow man?" she shouted at the startled taxi driver. "We work hard for our money." As a Mexican, she was proud of her country and the warmth, generosity, and hospitality of its people. She felt its poor reputation outside the borders was unwarranted. Mixed feelings consumed her as she glared angrily at the handcuffed men. We watched with interest as the police vehicle impound team towed the taxi away. "There goes a menace off the roads," Monica muttered angrily. One of the police officers called another taxi from a safe company. As we waited for it to turn up, we heard the muffled sounds of the taxi driver and his accomplice being beaten by the police in a back room. Monica sat tensely in the second taxi all the way downtown, clutching her bag tightly to her lap. A couple of incident-free weeks later, we were headed down the coast road just past the Bosque de Chapultepec to have lunch when another exceedingly intelligent taxi driver came up with a lame scheme to rip us off. During my visit to Mexico City, Monica and I had become close friends. We often went out at night, and on her days off, we were in the habit of going somewhere relatively quiet to walk and talk. Long walks through the park were one of my favourite things to do on warm, dry days. We both knew exactly what the taxi fare would be. We had been coming here regularly for several weeks and took turns paying. When we arrived in Chapultepec, I took out my wallet to pay the expected fare and quickly glanced at the taximeter to confirm the price. I was shocked when I saw the figures on the meter were nearly double the money I had in my hand. Monica and I had been conversing in English for the whole trip. The only Spanish word either of us had spoken to the driver was Chapultepec. We both correctly assumed that he figured he had 2 dumb tourists in his cab and thought he could make a quick buck. Monica let him have it in enraged and mildly offensive but eloquent vocabulary. She told the driver this was a ridiculous fare and that we knew full well the normal fare was half of what he was asking. "Do you think we are stupid? We're not tourists," she yelled. "What do you think I did? Turn on the night rate?" he said nervously, glaring from the rearview mirror. "Yeah, I think that's exactly what you did," she shouted at him. "You think you can cheat us." Mexico City taxi fares were split into 2. There was a day rate from 6 a.m. to midnight and a night rate from midnight to 6 a.m., which was almost double the day rate. If business was slow, we could often bargain with a taxi driver who would take us home for the day rate in the middle of the night. The taxi driver cringed and shrunk into his seat. He was totally busted. What kind of idiots do you think we are? You would sell your own mother for $1 if you thought you could get away with it. She blasted him through the roof. As Monica ranted, he caved in. By the time she was done, it was so obvious he had switched to the night rate on the meter that he folded and shamefacedly admitted it. "Let's not pay him at all," I suggested, peeved. It seemed a fitting retribution. Putting all my money away, I refused to pay the fare. In his dishonest effort to double the price, he ended up with nothing. Seeing his pitiful face after being busted, Monica wanted to pay the normal fare, but I wouldn't let her. I was insistent and pushed her out of the car, sliding out of the seat behind her. We left him without a razoo and walked away. If he chooses to drive around with his thumb on the scale, he knows the risks and has to be prepared for the consequences of getting caught. I felt righteous. He still has to make a living, she countered. He can make an honest living with what he has. He doesn't need to steal. While travelling alone in the city, I was merciless with dishonest taxi drivers and anyone else I caught cheating. I encountered taxi drivers who didn't reset their meters when I got into their car. Instead, they tried to add my kilometres on top of the ones from a previous passenger. I rarely went anywhere I didn't know the fare, and that could be roughly guessed in most cases anyway. Some cabbies tried to take me on long roundabout city tours to increase the tariff. Chances are, I probably spent more time in Mexico City berating the dishonest drivers of yellow taxis for being low-life thieves than I did actually travelling in them. None of the cheaters I caught ever got paid. Monica, on the other hand, was more trusting and infinitely more compassionate, and nearly got both of us killed for it. Juan Carlos, Monica's boyfriend, lived with his older brother in an apartment complex out near the city's central bus station. From time to time, Monica and I would go there instead of going home and spend time with Juan Carlos and his family. As the taxi drove through the deserted streets in the wee hours, we noticed the driver dawdling around in a deserted area of the city. It made us nervous. Monica asked him to hurry. "It's late, and I have to get home to my husband," she said, smiling at the driver when he glanced back at her in the rearview mirror. Countless thousands of single women traveling in taxis around Mexico City tell the drivers they are married to avoid being hit on. At most, Monica thought that's what he was trying to do to us. Suddenly, the car pulled over into a wide strip of darkness under an overhead pass. The driver pulled a gun out and pointed it at Monica's head. I started in my seat, and he waved it in my direction for a second. "Empty your purses and hand over all the money," he ordered. The guy was going berserk, and Monica thought he would pull the trigger any second. Not willing to die for spare change, I pulled 208 pesos from my pocket and gave it to him. It was about $15. My plan was to go to the bank the following morning. I didn't have much cash. "It's all I have," I whispered. Terrified and whimpering, Monica also did exactly what she was told. She handed over the equivalent of around $600. She was planning to go shopping with her boyfriend the following day. They were going to buy some things for her sister's upcoming wedding, and she also wanted to buy gifts for the bridesmaids. Fortunately, Monica had left the night's takings from the cafe in the safe. "Get out of the car," the driver demanded. "Go slowly. You run, I shoot." Without hesitation, we slid along the passenger seat, holding hands, and backed slowly out the door, never taking our eyes off his face. "Toss the bag back into the car," he ordered when he saw her handbag slung from her shoulder. The gun was pointed straight at Monica's heart. My own heart beat out of my chest, and I prayed to all the Aztec deities that he wouldn't shoot her. We froze on the pavement, terrified he would pull the trigger. She tossed her prized handbag through the window. "Get on your knees so I can shoot you." Monica trembled in fright. Tears rolled down her face, dragging thick streams of black mascara with them. She was convinced she was about to die, and no one knew where we were. I wasn't sure he would have the time, or the wherewithal, to shoot both of us. Surreptitiously, I sought out escape routes. The area at the back of the taxi seemed like the perfect place to dive towards if bullets started flying. I doubted he'd shoot out his own windows. "Get on your knees." As the driver shouted from the front seat, she fell to the ground and begged him not to shoot her. "Monica, on the count of 3, lie down flat on the pavement," I whispered, going down on my knees. Such was her distress, she didn't hear me. She knelt on the side of the road and waited for the bullet that would end her life. The taxi took off, slamming the back door shut as the car careened onto the road, leaving rubber on the tarmac. He left us alive, but stranded in the dead of night in an unpopulated part of the city. As he disappeared, Monica recited his license plate until he was out of sight. Relieved, we hugged. "I still have this," she announced proudly, producing her small telephone. While rummaging in her handbag for the money, she had slid the phone into her pocket without being seen. The first thing she did was punch in the license plate number and record the name and number of the taxi company. Then she called Juan Carlos, who came to pick us up straight away. Suffering from trauma, Monica took a week off work and stayed in bed the whole time. When I went to see her, she looked terrible. "I'm never taking a taxi anywhere in this city again," she cried. Using buses and trains more often, I still kept taking taxis around the city while I was there, but always had someone call a safe company and never travelled alone late at night. Any other way just wasn't worth the risk. When Juan Carlos' father heard the story, he gave the license plate and phone numbers to some old school friends he knew in the police force. 2 weeks later, the driver was arrested and was eventually sent to prison for armed robbery. The police forced him to pay back every cent of the money he had stolen from Monica. It was a happy ending, but it was still too close for comfort. About then, my time was up in Mexico City and I moved on, but kept in touch with Monica. A few months later, she happily announced that her parents had bought her a second-hand car for her birthday. It was safer than taking a taxi to hell.
Being robbed at gunpoint isn't a joke. Unlike the dumb kid in Morocco, who obviously had no idea what he was doing, this wasn't the first rodeo for this Mexican taxi driver. He'd definitely done this before. Unfortunately for him, Monica's family had enough connections to get him locked up. People like that belong in prison. The things that go through your mind when someone is pointing a loaded gun at your head are kind of insane. I remember thinking that I'd never see Dad again. And another thought in my head was that I didn't have any ID on me, so no one would ever know what happened to me. I'd just vanish off the planet and no one would even notice for months. Then they'd never know if I'd been killed or just disappeared. It's a weird feeling to realize that if I dropped dead tomorrow, barely anyone would notice. I guess that's a great reason to keep on living for as long as possible.
Join me next week in Vietnam, where I learned there are 0 benefits to being a forgetful dumbass.
Hey there, love bugs! Welcome to the jungle! I'm Nancy Miarelli, your guide to the ecological and entomological, i.e. bug, wonders of Ecuador. With my master's in entomology and a passion for ecology and conservation, I'm here to take you on an unforgettable adventure through the mega diverse forests and more lush than you may have expected mountainsides of Ecuador. This year, I'm excited to offer 2 unique science-focused tours. Join me for a nature journaling course where we'll sit in the grass, sketch, observe, and reflect on all the creatures and plants that we discovered. Or dive deep into evolutionary theory on my evolution tour, where you'll see what you learned in a book that one time growing on the side of a tree. Ready to embark on a journey of discovery? Visit www.scibugs.info, that is Scibugs, SCIBUGS, to learn more or find me, Scibugs, everywhere on the internet. Let's explore Ecuador and all it has to offer together.
Do you have any crazy travel stories? What's the most insane thing that happened to you while you were on the road? If you'd like to share, send an MP3 recording of your story or write it into an email and send it to thewitchmob@gmail.com, and it could feature in a future episode. The Who Is This Crazy Hag podcast is created, written, read, produced, edited, mixed and published by BooksByRoni. If you'd like to grab a copy of Few Are Travel Tales I Never Told Mom, find the paperback on Amazon or email thewitchpod@gmail.com to get an ebook. Also, let us know via email or on Blue Sky at The Witch Pod if you're reading in a book club or a group of friends so we can give you a shout out. Don't forget to tell us where you are in the world. You can visit The Witch Pod on Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music and Castbox, and also Substack and Patreon. See you next week.
Bye!